how many times, Maria, I'm sure you've done this, I know I have, you get a gut feeling about something, right? You know, you just pick up that gut vibe and you go, no, I'm ignoring that. I'm going to go against my gut feeling. And then 6 months later...
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Uncensored Direct Marketing. Today, I have Webb. I should say Dr. Webb. So Ant and I have a very long history. I've known Ant for 15 years or so right now. And I'm very excited to have him on, guys, because Ant is one of the first clients that Direct PayNet ever had. Number one. And number two, Ant has a fighter's story. So Ant was the king of supplements, nutraceuticals, I guess we could say, in 2010, 2011, 2012-ish. So really, you know, probably a lot of you weren't even online at that point. So Ant was online and selling supplements and doing it at a huge scale. After which there was a big fall from grace, of course, and everything kind of exploded. And Ant has lived many lives since then. So I'm excited to explore, first of all, you know, Ant, your experience in the supplement world way back when it was starting. It was really, you know, kind of the new thing and the lessons learned. And obviously talk about your path right now. You know, you're a doctor now. So that's really awesome. And Ant, you know, he knows a lot about just the mindset, how to be successful, you know, how to go through all these difficult experiences. So we're going to have a rocking episode, guys. You have to listen to the end because there's going to be so much knowledge and so many things that you can take away. And thank you so much, Ant, for gracing me with your presence today. I'm very excited to see you after all these years.
It's great. Time just goes too quick, doesn't it, Maria? And and talking to you now, it feels like yesterday. It's just gone so quick. But hey, look, let's make the most of this. And let's get the listeners something to really value and get out of this as well, you know, because as you said, there was a huge fall from grace and some huge learning things, you know, some huge learning curves, which hopefully others will get something out of this.
For sure. And I mean, the thing is, the testament of us feeling like we've known each other and it hasn't been that much time is obviously I had a lot of affinity for you and your wife, Tansy, and just your family and so forth. So like we always had a nice relationship. So I feel like people that I had a nice relationship with, even if it's like 10 years later, we run into each other on the street. It's like, oh my gosh, right? So I'm happy. It's the memory of you, your family, and your business is something that's engraved in my mind and probably will never go, just because I've had a lot of clients that have come and gone since. But like I said, it was the beginning of my journey, and you trusted me a lot with you know, a lot of stuff that was going on in your business, and I was you know so happy to have you in my sphere and learn from you and learn a lot of business lessons and how to do things and so forth. So you know, I guess we'll stop the love fest, guys. We'll get on with it. I'll ask Ant a couple of questions, but I do want to kind of explore, because the supplement and the nutraceutical space are still very hot. There's still a lot of people who are making a ton of money one month and losing it all the next and so forth. And you had a very popular product. It was called Cho Young. So Cho Young tea, it was a weight loss tea. So now everybody's on the Ozempic train, but you know, Ant was the pioneer, let's call it, of weight loss teas back in the day. And I mean, you were doing very high volumes, you know, if you can tell us a little bit about that, but you were doing very high volumes. You had a lot of partnerships with some very big ad agencies. Just really at that point, it almost felt like nothing can get to you, right? Like nothing can stop you, right? When you're making that much money early on in your career and, you know, things are happening so fast, you get caught up. But I'm just curious if you can tell us just a little bit of the story about Cho Young, how you started in the supplement space when kind of it was new, right? 2009, 2010, not many people were doing that. And then just walk me through a little bit the story of what happened.
Yeah. Wow. Let's try and condense it down to keep it interesting for people as well, because there's so many peaks and troughs, but we'll just pick on some really good points and some highlights as well. You know, this all started as an idea, as everything does, doesn't it? You know, and that's what I talk about now with people, that everything in business starts with an idea in one person's mind in some way. And I'm sure we get teams into it, but this all started as an idea. And what the idea was that I was working with a couple of fellas that were running an IT business, and they saw some trends developing in the world, and they knew that I was really into the internet and trying to make the most of it. And of course, back then it was called the internet. That was what it was. It's like my mate still calls Facebook the Facebook. I don't know why I called it that, but back then,
you're aging us.
Of course, when this all started, it was just about. It was called nutraceuticals then, and it was all about repeat billing, and it was all about getting people to buy into a product. But then, of course, that it became the price point of, well, you can sign up for like 99 pence or whatever for your P&P. And we now know, of course, to start the ball rolling with the merchant processing. So we've got rebilling facilities. And this was even before we had like 3D Secure. This is before we had to have all those other verifications and security. And we did grow, and we really took advantage of a huge opportunity where people were striving for a quick solution for weight loss, And one of the strengths that we really managed to achieve was we were able to move into retail as well as online. And when that happened, that started to feed each other because we had such a strong online presence, and we were working, as you said, with some top like US and Canadian-based marketing agencies and sales agencies. And these guys were the top of the tree with affiliate marketing, and it was affiliate marketing that's really, really drove this because we was offering a commission of around $25 for a $1 sale, so you can see that it's just going to explode or implode, whichever way you want to go. But of course, we had the stats because we knew what the conversion rates would be. We knew what the fall off rates would be. We knew, and chargebacks was the thing which we had to manage so carefully because, of course, we know the death of a merchant account is chargebacks, right? So we had to really be on that all the way through. And working with you, Maria, was an absolute pleasure because that gave us the expertise to know what to do and how to manage those accounts. Because what I will say is that we were never out to rip anybody off, but we were out to maximize opportunity. And I think that's okay to do that, to maximize opportunities. But we do see, of course, in this space, so many people out just to rip people off. And I understand why the protections and the restrictions are in place, and quite rightly so. And I don't know if you remember, we actually also had a lot of processing in Iceland at the time.
Yes.
And we had the Icelandic ash cloud. Do you remember that when the volcano went up in the air?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
and it stopped the world trading, didn't it? Yeah. And we were right in the middle of that. So we had a lot of challenges of Iceland. We had to fly half our team. In fact, you came with us out to Iceland to go and see to meet with the banks guys because they couldn't believe what success we were having, And just to put it into perspective, we were shipping out around 50,000 pounds GBP sterling per day. So we're doing around 50 grand a day when we were really steaming. And I've got to tell you a funny story. Tansy and I Tansy, my other half, bless her, she's so patient with me. I decided that we was going to launch an additional product. So we was going to have an upsell. So we got the normal tea product. And at the same time, you could also go into a colon cleanse. This was back in the days when
I remember the colon cleanser.
Yeah, Pro Cleanse Gold, I think it was called. And what we did, I said to Tansy, now we'll do the P&P from home. We'll just get somebody in to help us out, at home to do the logistics. Oh my God, Maria. We was expecting to do 20, 30 a day, maximum, something like that. We ended out shipping 5,000 a week just from home. And we ended up with in the UK, we've got the Royal Mail, right? So, and then we've got Parcel and Force as well. So bearing in mind, we lived in a pretty residential type area. We'd end up with an articulated lorry, like a semi, as the Americans would call it, turn up at the bottom of the drive, unloading these pallets of products. We'd be wheeling them up the drive into the garage. We'll be labeling them and branding them because we bought the product weren't labeled, and then shipping it back out. Then Royal Mail would turn up the next day, and we got these containers, these stills on wheels. We're pushing up and down the drive to fulfill this with raw, and it was just crazy times. And looking back on it, we have to have some fun looking back on it, but they were crazy times. But it's all about opportunity, isn't it? It's about maximizing opportunity. And that's really what happens, is that we pushed and we grew, and we were, as you said, we were the top of the tree back then. We were probably the largest seller of this nutraceutical product. Choyang tea at the time. We breached into retail, and that really helped us, but it also killed us, because what happened was that was the start of the decline. When we went into retail, we didn't realize that the retailer, and I'm not going to tell you their name here because they might end up doing something not very nice to me, but this particular retailer started to call the shots with us, and there was one particular time when they ordered 250,000 pounds worth of an order for us. And we got the order, so we had to get it fabricated and produced, and everything was produced in China because the tea come from China. And we got it all. And on the day of delivery, the day before, they said, well, we decided we don't really want it now. We want to change the order value. It's like, hang on a minute.
Oh my gosh, 250,000 pounds of...
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I know. And it was like, So, and unfortunately, they started them, holding the cards because they knew that we were vulnerable, because what could we do? We couldn't just sit on this stock. And anyway, so that was, but the thing that actually really turned the nail on us, I don't think you and I have ever really spoken about this. This is something, one of the golden points, which I would like anybody just to really focus in on what I'm about to say, because this can make or break your business. And what it was, it wasn't cash flow. It wasn't about marketing. It wasn't about logistics. It wasn't about product. It was none of that. It was about the supplier chain. And what was happening was that to keep our costs low, and also to ensure consistency, we had our product produced in China because it was a Chinese tea. We had it packaged in China. We had it boxed in China. We had everything produced. So it would then go into a container, like a 20-foot container or a 40-foot container, and it would be landed in whichever country we wanted to distribute in, all done. So as soon as you open the box, you can take the product out and it can go straight on the shelf. We didn't want any interference from the landing country to have to do branding, pricing, or anything. It was all barcoded. It was all done all the way through and through. What we wasn't aware of, and we started to see happening, is at the same time as the retail. In fact, let me just add some more meat on the bone, Maria, because the reason why it was so successful for everybody was its high margins. This particular product, we were selling a 30 packet of tea bags for £39.95. So, and that's a high price point for 30 tea bags. Yeah. But the product was so successful that people just bought it. I remember standing in Harrods once in the UK, and there was a lady from Saudi Arabia, from the Middle East, and she was in front of me, and it was such an ego boost. She spent £1,200 buying Choyang tea. And I was, what are you doing with that? And she goes, well, we're taking it back home to the Middle East to all our family and friends.
Well, we also have to say, this was like 15 years ago. So, with the cost of inflation, that'd be like $100 or more for 30 tea bags.
Yeah, it would be, yeah. But that kind of worked because it was the whole placebo effect of, this is so good, I'm going to make sure it works. So if someone, and I'm going to sound sexist saying this, and I don't mean to be, but most of our clients are female.
Yeah.
So when the lady was buying a packet of tea for 40 quid, she was going to make sure it worked by cutting out all the crap food and doing the exercise and everything else, because she wanted to justify it. I've just spent £40 on this tea. It's going to work.
Yeah.
So quite right. So there was a whole psychological effect as well. And I mean, whether that's right or wrong, who knows? She got what she wanted at the end of the day, or they got what they wanted at the end of the day, which was the weight loss, because it worked. But our downfall, and this is this golden nugget for people to really focus in on. Supply chain. What we didn't realize that was happening was when we put an order into our Chinese suppliers, and we'd say we want, 25,000 packets or whatever, they would mess up their whole engine to have their production line, the printing line, and the fabrication for the packaging, because it's all in foil sealed packets. Yeah. And what they were doing, they were producing the product for us, put it in a container, in a storage, done. But what we didn't know was they was leaving the system running to produce another 20,000 for themselves. So they were producing real product, which they were paying for the ingredients at raw costs. Yeah. So it didn't affect us, but they were then replicating our product without us knowing. And it was only afterwards we started seeing product coming up on Alibaba and eBay and all these kinds of, we're thinking, how is this product selling for half the price it's selling in Holland & Barrett? And that's where then retailers are then getting the ump with us, because we're being sold online for half. And we're going, this isn't us. And it took us, Maria, years to get to the bottom of that. And that's what was happening, was the supplier.
And this was an exclusive thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So nobody else could we owned the rights to Cho Young, and we owned the product, we owned the tea brand, we owned everything. But our supply chain were just helping themselves. And they weren't stealing from us because they only gave us what we paid for, but they would carry on the production without us knowing.
Well, they were stealing in the sense of like, they're stealing your brand. They're stealing your name, your popularity. At the end of the day, they're just shooting themselves in the foot because what ended up happening? The product, just
it exploded, and it just went. And which is such a shame. But hey, that's, if anyone's listening to this is trying to take litigation in China, it doesn't work. It just falls over. It's
not going to work. No, but that's why maybe sometimes, you pay a little bit of a premium for US or UK, like kind of local manufacturing, but you have the protections of the law.
Exactly right. And you can go and knock on their door.
Yeah. Well, that's also another thing. Yeah. You could go to China, but you'll probably end up going to jail, not them. So that could be a problem.
Yeah. Wow. So that was really what started the whole implosion, because cheaper products flooding the market, because the Chinese were entrepreneurs. They were seeing that there's this product which cost a few dollars to manufacture for them because they already had the process in play. They had all my printing plates, they had all the artwork, they had everything.
Yeah.
So literally they could produce a product for say $2 and sell it on the black market for $15.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, no brainer.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I didn't know. I mean, on the merchant account side, I knew all the issues that we were facing there. And there were some, but like we were controlling it, the way that we could. And I knew on the marketing side, there was some strong partners. I didn't realize it was that, but that's the issue that I hear a lot about this, like just supplement companies and nutraceutical and all that is my wheelhouse. I started with you and I kind of continued, and I have a lot of businesses in that space. And a lot of times, one thing I see often is that when you try to split yourself up too much, you try to, let me do retail, let me do online, let me do affiliates, let me do YouTube, let me do this. It just ends up exploding because sometimes it's like it works on one channel, and you might be better off kind of doubling down on that channel versus opening new channels. Not for everybody, but in general, going retail is a very different game than online. So
absolutely,
it almost takes like a real retail expert to be able to navigate these things, because you knew the online world, but you're like, oh yeah, cool. This company wants to, why not? Right. But like, there's a lot of challenges with retail that most online merchants don't know.
And it was the success was its downfall. If it wasn't so successful, then there wouldn't be the counterfeit product, and there wouldn't be all of that flooded the market. And that was just a challenge. It was.
Well, I mean, in general, supplements, nutraceutical products, and so forth, they always have a certain time, right? I don't know of any supplement that's been around for 10 years and has stayed popular, right? It's always the supplement merchants that we work with. The ones that are most successful are usually the ones who are just reinventing themselves. Like you had the Cho Young tea, then you had the colon cleanser, then you could have gone something else. They always do kind of the next big thing. If you like, even for example, had not that didn't happen, let's say with the retail stuff on Cho Young, I'm fairly certain Cho Young would have had its heyday and kind of gone down.
Absolutely.
Eventually. Maybe not like with the bang that it went out, but it would have likely gone down. I do want to kind of intercept here and talk, since we're talking about origin stories. So I do want to mention, and I don't know if you know or you remember how we met, right? I'm in Canada physically. So Ant is physically in the UK. Cho Young was really based in Europe. Like that's where you were kind of processing most of the volume was in the UK. So, people are like, well, how the hell did Maria meet Ant and how did we know each other? So we didn't know each other. We had no idea who each other was. My kind of origin stories. When I left Pornhub and Mansef, which was, the adult company I was with, I got off on my own. I had some experience with some supplement stuff and some adult. And I said, okay, now let me try to open up some new markets. So the US market, in my opinion, was a little bit more developed, I guess, in the payment processing side. Not really, because it was 2010, but still more than across the pond. So I said, let me try to get some clients in the UK and kind of, obviously I want to stay language wise. I couldn't go to like Spain or something. So I said, let me do this. So I just looked at the most popular offers. I had domain tools, looking at, supplements, health, beauty stuff. Cho Young came up. And I was like, what's this Cho Young? Like, what is this? Like, I was just kind of looking around and so forth. And somehow I got your Skype. I found your Skype somewhere. Somebody gave it to me. I asked and I was like, this is gold. I'm going to contact this guy and tell him I have merchant accounts for him. I can do this. And I had some relationships in Iceland. I had some relationships in different places. So I was like, this is perfect. And the funniest thing actually happened. I don't think you even realize what you did or how it actually happened. We were talking and we never like did video. I guess back in the day, people didn't have webcams that easily either. So we were just talking.
Yeah.
And you said, oh, I said, I'd love to work with you, blah, blah, blah. And you said, you know what? Where are you located? I said, Montreal. And you literally go to me, great. I'm going to be in New York next week. Let's meet up. And I'm like, I'm in Montreal. Why is he saying we're going to meet in New York? That's like 6 hours away. I got to take a flight there. But I didn't want to say no to you. I was like, okay, I'll see you there. I literally just said, I'll see you there. I got into my car and I drove to New York to come meet you. Because I was like, I don't know what to say. Because I literally said I'm in Montreal and you're like, great, I'll be in New York next week. Let's meet. And I was like, New York?
Isn't that a typical Brit? Us Brits are so useless, aren't we?
That's like saying, oh, great, I'll be in Greece next week. Maybe we can meet up, because you're in the UK. Like that really doesn't.
Oh.
But it was great because I remember I used to go to New York quite often because it's about a 6-hour drive from where I'm at. So I just called one of my girlfriends. I said, hey, you want to go to New York? She's like, yeah, sure. Let's go to New York.
I remember that bit now you've said that.
Yeah. And she's this very, very tall girl. And we went there. She ended up meeting her husband there, like random. And I ended up meeting you and like we connected. And then, you know how things just randomly happen? We went to meet Tommy, who was in a very big New York ad agency.
Yeah.
And he somehow knew people who knew me. And as I was walking in the hall, I met the biggest biz op guy in the US at that time. His name is Shoe Money. I can say it. His name is Shoe Money. And I met Shoe and Tommy just introduced me to Shoe and was like, hey, Maria used to work for Pornhub. And Shoe was like, oh my God, that's so cool. We started talking. I ended up getting another client based on that meeting. So lesson for all you kids out there, take chances. Go
jump on a plane
and just jump on a plane, get in your car, drive wherever you need to drive. Because it was so random. I was like, I can't believe I met Ant. Now I have this client. Now I met this biz op guy and I'm working with him too, just randomly like that.
Isn't that's the whole sliding doors thing, isn't it? You know, that movie. And I believe in that so much, Maria, that you just never know. We just never, ever know, do we? What's going to happen? And who we're going to meet that's going to introduce us to, that's introduced. We just never know.
Random. And I came home from New York. I'm like, now I have the biggest supplement guy in the UK and the biggest biz op in the US. I was like, holy shit, this was like the best trip ever. So it was just so random. And I was like, and at first my instinct was, well, I just said Montreal. I didn't say New York. Maybe I should tell him I'm not actually physically. I was like, oh, fuck it. I'm just going to go to New York. Yeah. Whatever. I'll just go. And whatever happens, happens. If not, I'll have a good weekend. That's what I said. I'm like,
do you know what? I think because my mind was processing in that kind of way that if there was someone that needed to have, we need to have a face-to-face meeting. I remember doing it. I went to Shanghai for 24 hours. I flew all the way to Shanghai for one meeting, turn around and come back again. So I ended up having one meeting for about...
It works though, right? Because we met, we connected, was like, this is great. Let's work together. And it actually does, help solidify. I know we work in an online space and a lot of people hide behind veils, but my best relationships, my best clients, my best successes, I've always met in person.
And I think also by having that commitment, it signifies intent.
Yeah.
Because, because you and me, because way back then, although we didn't really know about it then, but we made an intention to dig deep and make something happen, to meet up, didn't we? Yeah. So we both knew there was a commitment on both of us to do something. Whereas you're right, like last week, 5 meetings I had all scheduled, just all cancelled. Because there was no real intent, because it's too easy, isn't it? Just say, yeah, we'll meet up and we'll have a chat. And at the 11th hour, they get stuck shopping or whatever. There was another podcast for the guys based in Singapore. And I'm sitting here all prepared because, Maria, you know me, when I commit to something, I do it. Completely. And I was like, for today's meeting, I was here a quarter of an hour beforehand and I made sure I'm set up, I'm done, I'm there, I've got my cup of tea because I'm in
now
Britain.
You're making me sound bad. Now, if and you, for you guys that are listening, when I got on the phone with Ant, I didn't have my setup wasn't ready. I was like, shit, I had my tires changed this morning and I was all over the place. You're making me look bad.
No. I didn't mean it for that. I just the podcast, I had another podcast with a guy in Singapore last week. So I'm sitting here all prepared, and I've done all my stuff and my research. And I'm sitting there going, well, how long are we waiting? 5 minutes went past and I went, what's happening? He went, oh, I'm really sorry. I'm running behind. I can't make it now. So, no, that's not the right way of doing it. Yeah. So he's missed out. He didn't get any of my content. So there we go.
Well, I mean, it's happenstance, it's kismet, whatever you want to call the word. Sometimes these things just happen. But the one thing I have some younger nieces and nephews that I'm trying to kind of guide through the business world and stuff like that is that, there's this old adage of like, whatever's meant to happen is going to happen. Yes. But you got to be out there for it to happen. Like you're not going to be in your house sitting and somebody's going to come into your house and tell you, you got to go get yourself out there. You got to meet people. You got to talk. You got to put yourself out there in order for the opportunities to happen. Like I don't know where I would have been had I not been traveling as much as I did at the beginning of my career. You would tell me, hey Maria, like you want to come to the UK for what? Yes. Like the sentence would not be like, I was like, I'm going to go, I'm going to meet the team. I'm going to meet everybody I can meet because I need to know what's happening. And that's how I'm going to, increase my business. So, I mean, now let's just kind of to talk a little bit about, we talked about all the awesome stuff of Cho Young and supplements and so forth. I'm curious, just on a personal level, when all that started crumbling and it started going down, and obviously your revenue went down with it. And, starting that all over is difficult mentally and financially and so forth. Like, what happened to you when you realized this, like, I'm going belly up here, like this is not working. I got to shut this down. So what happened to you and what did you do after that happened?
Okay, so I said to you at the very beginning, there's no filters on this conversation today. So we're going to talk about everything, warts and all. So, and I think it's really important. And the reason why I say it's really important is because we're all just human beings, right? We can put up this ego and this big flash exterior that we've got everything. But at the end of the day, we're just vulnerable bodies of around 70 trillion cells that sometimes we're happy and sometimes we're not. And that's what we are. And what happened was I built up this little empire, which I thought was, untouchable. But that wasn't really the case in the Maria, because I built up this lovely big farmhouse. And for those listening that appreciate American muscle cars, I used to love my muscle cars. I had 19 of them. I had Mustangs, Corvettes, and all sorts of stuff.
Oh,
and
I remember your cars. Yeah, you had a nice little collection.
That was my little that was my, my materialistic thing, my little hit. But what happened was when everything all went completely down the pan, it kind of really started to stress me a lot. And, when people are on the outside looking in, they always make an observation that, well, he must be doing okay because he's had all this money and all this and everything. But, when we're sort of trying to recover from that really negative position, we were just hemorrhaging money. Just to try to keep the thing together, we were just burning through so much cash to try to find a way forward. But of course, when we got that negative implosion of the product, I would like to say the word sabotage, but it wasn't really. When we've got all that counterfeit product, and then we've got the retailers putting the reins in, and then the market been flooded with, and it was just like, it ends up in such a dark place. And the next bit I'm going to talk about is really serious. And it also touches, and you probably won't be expecting this, but it also touches on suicide, and it touches a very dark place. But I'm going to talk about it in a way that there is a positive outcome to this. But I think it's really important that we just understand that sometimes we put ourselves into a pickle. And when I say a pickle, I mean we put ourselves into a place when we don't need to. We just need to sometimes pull the reins and sit back and make a real objective observation. But what happened was I took everything so personally, Maria, because I was trying to do my best for everybody else. And I didn't really retain much for myself. It was always trying to do the right thing for everybody else. Although when we're in that situation, people don't see it from the outside. So I'd done everything possible that I could to do the best and be the best. But it just becomes so overwhelming in the end that in April 2015, I was 30 seconds away from taking my life. And that is really, really hard, because when you've worked so hard to do everything for everybody else, and you get to that point where I don't know what to do, because I felt at that time that everything I was touching was going wrong. And I felt that whenever I tried to find a solution, it would implode. And I ended up, Maria, doing the hardest bloody thing that any human being can ever do. And that's writing my goodbye note to my kids. That is real tough shit to deal with. And the reason why this is why I do what I do now, because in April 2015, when I was in that place, I was about to disappear, and literally I was 30 seconds. We was living at the farm, and I was sitting at the farm table, and I thought I was doing the right thing for everybody else. I thought I was ending the chaos for everybody else, but I was just about to disappear. Honestly, it was seconds away. And as I was about to go, a little robin, a little bird, it landed down beside me, just on my desk at the bench.
Yeah.
And when this little robin tweeted, I looked at it and I thought, "What? Why is that bird tweeted?" And when that bird tweeted, I thought, "Why is it tweeted? It's either shouting out for its mate, it's defending its turf, or it's calling out for its kids. Now, one of those three things." And Maria, when that hit me, I'm not a religious guy, right? So when I use the words awakening or see the light, I don't mean it in a religious capacity. Yeah. But when I realized that, hang on a minute, the most three important things in life is partner, turf, i.e. your home, security, and kids, all in equal amounts. When I realized that, I'm going to swear, because you swore at this, I'm going to use the word now as well. When that happened, I thought, what the fuck was I about to do? I thought, no, that bird's got it right. This is all bollocks. All of this stuff in the world, the cars, the money, the house, that is wrong, because that's not what my motivation should be in life. My motivation is my kids, my partner, and ensuring I got a safe home for them. So at that point, I reversed. It was like watching the Matrix in reverse in slow motion. I remember myself going, no, I'm coming out of this.
Yeah.
And I remember going, right, hang on. This, by the way, just on a serious point, the place I was in, I never shared this with anybody at the time. This was not a cry for help, like a 6-month leading attention thing. And this was just me on my own, thinking completely on my own, because we all know, right, running your own business is probably the loneliest job on the planet. Yes. We can't share stuff with our partners because then also we go and get a proper job and stuff like that. So it's a real lonely place. And I'm very lucky, actually, to have been taken to that dark place, because what it did is it set me on a new journey. It changed me from being that arrogant ant that I'd become, because I had everything and got everything and had all the money. I'd become someone that I wasn't really me. I was just trying to fulfill this, whatever it was I was thinking I was. And I then decided to go on a journey, Maria, and I needed to go on a journey to understand, why do human beings do the things we do? Why do we feel the way we feel? And what can I do to be the best version of myself for me and my loved ones, Tansy and the kids and my mum? So what could I do to understand? So I spent 5 years doing R&D. So I caved in and lost everything. I ended up going bust with nothing at all and going back to the beginning.
Wow.
And when I went back to the beginning...
Do you mind telling us how old you were when that happened?
Yeah. So let's think about that. It was 2016. So I was 51.
Okay. So just 51. Wanted to point that out. So, I mean, a lot of people, this happens.
40 now.
A lot of people, it happens at much younger ages, and it's very fearful. Imagine, a partner, kids, a mom you're helping out as well, and just so much kind of life lived and at 51. So I mean, I'm sorry to hear everything that you went through, but I'm happy, that you did go through it and got out at the other end.
We have to have these roller coasters in life, don't we? We have to have the downs to appreciate the ups, and vice versa as well.
Yeah.
There's stuff that I did in those higher days, which I will never be able to do again, because those times have moved on, what with security and threat and everything else as well. But we had some amazing times back then, which I really cherish now. But what happened was I needed to get on this understanding. So because I never wanted to be in that place again, Maria, and I also thought, well, if I've been in that place, I'm a switched on guy. I know what can and can't go wrong. And I thought, if I've ended up there, so can other people. So I need to do something to help other businesses never get in that place. So that's what I decided to do. So I went back to school. Basically, I taught myself 5 years. I then worked with the Swiss School of Business Research. They deemed my writings and my investigation a PhD worthy of a PhD. I then also wrote a book and published a book called Quick Wake Up the Pilot, which explains about that most human beings, we spend 95% of our life completely unaware of what our unconscious mind is thinking and the decisions that it makes. We just don't know. We live life like robots, always doing what we've always done based upon our previous values and behaviors. Yeah. So that was a massive wake-up call, and that's what I do now, So when the opportunity came for you and me to have a chat, and I thought, this would be so cool because there's going to be guys out there pushing this, and working really, really hard. And I just thought, sometimes shit happens, isn't it? Sometimes it rains from the barbecue for whatever reason, and I just wanted to give that reassurance that it doesn't matter how tough life gets. Tomorrow's a sunny day, it really doesn't matter. It's all about just thinking, right, okay, well, what's the most important three things? Home, kids, partner. Yeah. Let's focus on that, because we've always got future ahead of us. And I talk about this, what I do now for a living, Marie. I don't know if we haven't spoken about this, but I now speak at conferences and events. So I speak from a survivor point of view. I speak as a lived experience that I've, ridden a roller coaster. I've hit that really awful place, that dark corner, which no one else should ever go in as well. But because I speak about it from a point of authenticity, I'm not just an academic that's read book on how to run a business and then read books on how psychotherapy works. I've actually been there and done it. I think that's a huge value to real people in real business. Entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, these people that are struggling, they're in a corner. Because let's face it, for all of the successful guys in business, there's hundreds that are trying their best to do the best, and they're struggling, and it's those people that are struggling. That's where I'm at. That's why I'm there to help now, just to say to them, don't worry, tomorrow's a sunny day.
You have the warrior stripes, right? So you went from, a high 7-figure a month business, so making 7 figures a month is one thing. Making high 7 figures a month is another. A huge staff, just so much going on, to almost losing it all, to losing it all, to reinventing yourself. Like, I commend you for that, because I don't know that many people that are able to kind of do that. But I am happy that little birdie came. And sometimes you get signs. And you have to also, like, people have to realize, I think, that you have to be looking for signs, and you have to be, around to see beauty. And regardless of, whether you have a family, whether you have kids, or whether, your life is important. And there's things like my life in my mid-20s, does not resemble my life that it is now. Not even close. Like, I cannot even imagine, like, for me, like, having a relationship was like, I don't think so. I'm never going to get along with someone. How is this going to happen? So I thought I was going to be a lone rider for kind of the rest of my life. You actually knew me when I was a lone rider. And, sometimes you just have to open yourself up to certain things, and it happens at different times for different people and so forth. But, I feel like this is a very valuable thing for entrepreneurs to know, is that it can all change in a day. Absolutely. Like, for me, one thing that happened to me was actually also in 2015. I was working heavily with a bank that was offshore. I'll just leave it at that. And they had some legal issues in the country. Not my fault, nothing to do with my portfolio. But I went from making close to 6 figures a month from that portfolio, to getting a call on my birthday from my relationship manager, literally my birthday in 2015. I get a call. I'm thinking she's calling me to say happy birthday because she must have seen it in my file. Oh, that's so nice of her. She's calling us happy birthday. I pick up the phone. She's like, we're closing down your portfolio. I said, what? And she said, we're closing it down. The country's under a lot of distress. There's a lot of legal stuff happening. We can't do non-residents. We can't do this. We can't do that. And she literally obliterated my whole business in a matter of seconds. This was, hundreds of clients and relationships set up. And I was like, this is the end. That's it. This is the end. I can't do this again. I built this huge portfolio and it was literally just taken away from me for nothing, for a legislation. But what that taught me is, first of all, I was doing a lot of stuff offshore. And I said, my wheelhouse is the US. I'm Canadian, yes, but like my brain is in the US kind of thing. I have American friends. I feel like I was probably born American or something, but just live in Canada. I said, why am I trying so hard to be different? Let me just, there are people who need my services in the US. I'm more comfortable in the US. I know the laws in the US. Why am I doing this? I said, I'm just going to go back to the US. So I just went full blown all in the US. And regardless of how many competitors I have, I put my foot down and I was able to get market share and rebuild my portfolio from scratch.
Oh, well done.
And now it's a lot more certain. I know the laws, I know what's going to happen. I know legislation, when you're in like South American countries, like, I don't know what the government's going to do there. Like, I mean, so it's interesting, how something seems so, gray and dark for 1 minute, but like you said, it's a sunny day the next day. And even if it's not sunny, it's something different. Just put yourself out there. So, for anybody's listening, I know a lot of people like in the crypto space, and crypto goes up and down. And I heard some horror stories, with the last kind of flow of crypto, people kind of lose it. Money it comes and goes. It comes and goes.
You can always make money, but you can never make lifetime.
Exactly.
Yeah, so important. And one of the things, I know we haven't got time to cover it today, but one of the things I get really motivated and talk about a lot is manifestation, manifesting wealth and success. And so many people have got this glossy view that we just start thinking Ferraris and it's going to rain Ferraris. And there's so much more than that to it, isn't there?
Bring me a Ferrari, Ad. Bring me a Ferrari.
Look, it's in the background. But all joking aside, but you as mentioned earlier on about, like kids of today, you need to actually get out there, do stuff, get out and make it happen. And that's really where manifesting is all about. But hey, we'll save that for another session, for another time.
No, I mean, there's so much to kind of unbox here in this conversation. And, I didn't know where it was going to go, but I'm happy that you shared that with everybody in the audience, because I think people see the Lamborghinis, see the Ferraris, see the 7 figures, but they don't see the other side. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And social media, not to shit on social media, but social media only, like, I'm not going to share that I'm going bankrupt. You know what I mean?
No,
like,
exactly.
It's not something that people are going to talk about. So same thing with you, everything was going, and then you just kind of retracted. I didn't know anything that happened to you after, because you're not going to go there and advertise. I only knew Ant when things were going great and everybody was like loving you and people wanted to do business with you. And then, so there's always two sides. But then after that, now you found another path, which is, helping other people in that situation, and also, getting a PhD. Congratulations. I'm sure it's not an easy feat, to get.
That was a tough call. Yeah. Look, there's the book. Look in the background. Look, there it is.
Oh, there it is. So if you guys are watching on YouTube, Ant is pointing to his book. And if you're not, we're going to put the links all down below, Ant. So don't worry about it. We're going to make sure that we're going to put your book links and how to get in touch with you down below. I am curious, just kind of to touch a little bit on the entrepreneurship journey and, things that you advise and not advise, but specifically, like you're talking about manifesting, what are some tips to manifest a life? Not necessarily, because I think a lot of people want the Lamborghinis and want all that, but you don't necessarily need it. And I think once you're able to achieve it, you realize life is actually simpler.
Yes.
I come from that position as well. I came from, making very little money to making a lot of money to making little money to start now making more money. And I realized that, whether you're making 150,000 or 500,000 or a couple of $1,000,000, your life pretty much stays the same. There's a basic income that everybody needs. But at the end of the day, a couple 100,000 or $1,000,000, yeah, it's great. I'm not going to say no. And I'm in business, so I obviously like to make money, but it doesn't change who I am. And it doesn't, maybe I'll buy a better blazer or maybe I'll buy better shoes. But they're all the same. You know what I mean? And it's not going to change who you are. So I'm just curious, how do you suggest people can manifest to get the life, I guess maybe that I should say that they deserve, not necessarily that they want?
Do you know, I can answer that with total passion.
Okay.
And the answer is passion. Because
oh, nice. Okay.
If we're doing something big, let's go back to motivation. Right? The thing that I learned when I came out of my dark place is that there's basically the way human beings run. We got two sorts of motivation. We got fear-based motivation, then we got attraction-based. And just to really cover it quickly here, fear-based is I'm doing this because I don't want that. So that was my whole life, Maria. When you knew me, I didn't know it then, but I do now. I was living in a thing called fear-based motivation. I was always doing everything I could to get something because I didn't want to be poor. I didn't want to miss out. I didn't want to be seen as insignificant. I didn't want to be, so it was a fear-based. Then the other type of attraction, the motivation, which is attraction-based, is I'm doing this because I want to get somewhere, because I want it. But I want it to appreciate it. I want it because I want it, not because I don't want something else. And there's a massive difference between the two. And the challenge is that if we are motivated by fear, we never have a sense of achievement because the fear never goes away. So we're always driving. And what I was doing, I didn't know this, but I talk about this a lot now. I was living in a place called deferred happiness. And if anyone listens to this, can hear themselves or their friends or their colleagues or their family saying this, you just got to have a bit of a wake-up call here. And the phrases go like this: I'll be happy when. As soon as someone says, I'll be happy when I get to six figures, I'll be happy when I get a new car, I'll be happy when they're living in deferred happiness. Now, the challenge is the way the mind processes, when we're processing for future events, we're not experiencing happiness in the here and now. And happiness only feels right in the here and now. You can't feel happy in the future until it becomes here and now. And you can't be happy in the past until it was happy now, and you can reflect on it. So happiness only is in the here and now, right? And the challenge with living in the fear motivation is we never have a sense of achievement because we're always chasing tomorrow. I'll be happy when. And when we're living in a sense of no happiness, we become unhappy because we haven't got that stimulation. We're not getting the dopamine, the serotonin. We're just always living in anxiety. We're always fearful of not getting. So we're chasing all the time. Whereas when our motivation is from attraction, it's that we've got a tangible event that we want to get to because we want it, not because we don't want to be somewhere else. And the thing is, when we achieve them, when we get to where we want to be, we have a sense of achievement. And when we have a sense of achievement, that increases our self-worth and our value and our belief and our confidence. And that then floods us with reward chemicals that I've achieved something. And guess what? When we achieve something, we feel happy. And what I would say, for any entrepreneur is, what's your real passion? Are you doing this because you want to get somewhere, i.e. passion, attraction, or are you doing this because you don't want to be somewhere? And both are not right or wrong, but it's the awareness is the key, because if your whole motivation is fear-based, you need to start to transition into attraction-based at some point so you have a sense of achievement, because if you don't, you're going to end up grumpy in business.
Well, that's definitely, as you were talking, for my personal kind of experience, I got into business because I didn't want to be poor.
Yeah.
And it wasn't an attraction based. So I did everything I could not to be poor. I wouldn't say that my parents were poor, but they struggled with money, and it was just something that always came. We always struggled to pay the bills. We always struggle. My parents had a restaurant. It didn't do so well at the end, and there was just so many money issues. So when I, started my career, it was like, I don't want to be poor versus I want to be prosperous. And I think that the first 18 months that I was in business, it was just getting clients because I didn't want to be poor.
Yeah.
But then it wasn't working. The first year or so, it was just like, I just kept missing the mark. I kept missing the mark. I kept getting clients and they would slip through my fingers and things weren't working well. And at one point, I was trying to sell terminals at restaurants and just everything because I was like, well, I need to create a base of low risk business because that's going to give me my financial security to be able to go over the high risk business, which I actually enjoy. I like working with high risk merchants. I like learning about online businesses and all that. But I was forcing myself to do low risk because for some reason I thought it'd be poor and it would be too volatile. But I mean, business is volatility in general, so you can't escape that. But the funny thing is that it didn't work. And as soon as I kind of let go and I said, I actually really like working with online businesses. I like working with high risk, smart business owners like you and Shu and all these people, just exciting stuff and things happening. And that's when everything started working for me. Just magically. It was like, just started working. And it was like, this is what I like doing. This is what I want to keep doing. And, I never looked back. So I definitely agree that coming from a place of fear, and I think this happens for every facet in life, like even relationship wise, if we take it personal, like, I was single for a really long time. And I think there was a bit of a fear of like, I need to find somebody when I turn 30. I need to find somebody. I don't want to be alone. That's not how you're going to attract your mate.
Exactly.
That is not how you're going to attract somebody that's going to be with you forever.
But isn't that always the way though? We say it, don't we? When we're on the single scene, when we're looking for dating, we don't find anybody. Then as soon as we settle down with somebody, it's like 3 buses come along at once, and we think, well, where did they all come from? There's always other opportunities arrive, don't they? And that's because we've stopped being needy, because we've started to give it a much more positive attraction-based vibration energy about ourselves, that people, hey, I want to be with this person because they love themselves, they're happy, they've got what they want. Nobody wants to be with needy people.
No, exactly. Nobody wants to be with a desperate person, a needy person, and also having just, you're right. It cracks me up because it brings me back to like when I met, my partner and stuff. And it was like, I was like, what's going on? Am I like a lot hotter than I was like 6 months ago, or what happened? I'm like, why are people asking me for my number everywhere I'm going? And it's like, they're stopping. I was like, what? And it was like, I'd been single for like 4 years. And I was like, how did this happen? Like, where did this all happen? So there's desperation, there's getting rid of the fear. Cause now you have, what you want or you're looking for. So you're not afraid of not having it. So I think that's pretty good. That's a really nice analysis. And I think a lot of people, go into business sometimes for the wrong reasons. There's making money. I don't feel is a bad thing. You know what I mean? Like when people say, I don't vilify making money. I don't vilify people who want to have a lot of money. I'm one of those people. But there also has to be some external motivating factors. There has to be, something that you enjoy doing. If you're just pumping and dumping just to kind of make money, it's going to have like a negative consequence.
It does.
It's going to end. You know what I mean? It's going to blow up. So I'm curious. And now that we're talking about, entrepreneurship journeys and so forth, what would you say is kind of your top advice to newer entrepreneurs, like people who are kind of starting their journey? Like what would be 1 or 2 things that you would really caution them against or give them as advice? Because I know, a lot of people have a lot of stuff to say, but like I said, you've been to war and have come through the other end. So I think a lot of people would be interested to know what you specifically would advise.
Yeah. Do you know what? It boils down to this, Maria, and this doesn't sound a really exciting answer because it's going to be quite short. And it goes like this. If it feels right, do it. If it doesn't, don't. And that might sound too simple, but inside of us, we know, don't we? If we ask ourselves that real honest question, does this feel right? can get all the glamour and the greed and everything else. But in my heart of hearts, does this feel right? Because that's where it's going to sit if it goes wrong. And it's just if it feels right, do it. But if it doesn't, how many times, Maria, I'm sure you've done this, I know I have, you get a gut feeling about something, right? You just pick up that gut vibe and you go, no, I'm ignoring that. I'm going to go against my gut feeling. And then 6 months later,
yes.
And
that happens a lot with people. Sometimes you meet somebody and you're like, I know I'm not sure about that person. And ignoring your gut is your second brain. I mean, my mom says this to me all the time. It's your second brain. When you get a feeling or, and I think as you get older, you start listening to feelings more.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have to have some quiet space in your head to be able to see those feelings. But the interesting thing is, when you get a feeling, it's at least to explore it. Don't ignore things.
Absolutely, it's there for a reason.
Them.
In this Western world, we're taught about the main senses, aren't we? The hear, touch, smell, feel, all that. But the sixth sense has been really quashed as a little bit woo-woo and a bit spooky and a bit sort of feathers and fluffiness. But actually, I think the sixth sense is probably the most important one. That's the one which I now really focus on most. I just go, how does this feel? How does this sit with me? And we all know, and do you know what? This is at a risk of being sexist, but it's not. Females are so much better at picking up vibrations and gut instincts than most blokes. If we walk into a room, if you and me was at an event, we walked into a room, you would walk in and within minutes, Maria, you'd know who's had an argument with who's seeing them, who's having an affair, who's not happy, right? You just know that, right? And us blokes.
I'm very good with feelings, though. I can point people out. I was having this discussion over the weekend with my sister, and I had pointed out a couple of people at a workplace that I was like, no, this is not going to work. And she's like, no, what are you talking about it? And her husband like, no. And then I brought up some examples from the past and I'm like, no, I was right about him, her, that person, that. And it's like, you can, first impressions are key. Like you were saying about the podcast that the person that, missed the podcast with you, you can't start. It's hard to go back when you start off on the wrong foot. It's really tough.
But a risk of being like woo-woo and fluffy and feathers again, when I went to like re-educate myself and start again. One of the guys I really spent a lot of time researching was a guy called Professor Bruce Lipton. Bruce Lipton was a stem cell scientist, and from him, I really learned about what we are as human beings from a biological point of view. You know me, Maria, I'm not that kind of guy that would normally be interested in that sort of stuff. But when I learned, actually,
I never got that from you. So if anybody's listening, I never got that from man. At least, now I'm listening. But yeah, you're not that kind of guy.
And what I learned is that actually we're just energy. Now, I know that all sounds fluff and woo-woo, but if we break it down to the individual cellular structures of our body, each cell is just an energy cell. It's a nucleus with a membrane around an atom, and an atom is an energy cell. And the outside world, which we call epigenetics, determines how that affects the energy cells within, which create feelings. And that's why when we go into a room and we pick up a bad vibe, we use those words, don't we? We get a bad vibe. It's a bad vibration. It's a bad vibration of energy. And when we talk about people, we say, yeah, well, I can get on with them because they're on the same wavelength. What we're talking about is energy again. They're on the same wavelength. And we just use these words and phrases without really thinking about it too much. But we are all energy, And if we meet people and we're on the same wavelength, we get on with them in harmony, don't we? But when we meet people and it's all like a mismatch, it just becomes a clash and we don't get on with them because they're not in the same wavelength. And I've really learned to sit back and actually use this in a professional capacity. And I have to pick my words really carefully when I work with businesses at events, because if I was to go in and stand on the stage and go, right, and we're here to talk about energy and the universe, most people, they go, oh my God, who's this nutter? Send him away. But actually, when I break it down and start to introduce about, okay, what are we as physical human beings? Let's talk about the cellular structure and what makes us do and what makes us motivated and unmotivated, and then bring all those bits in, they get it. They really get it. And that's why my little answer to you wasn't flippant just now about when we're starting out an entrepreneurial journey. I honestly believe this. If it feels right, do it, but do it with passion and intent, because then once you've got passion, intent and purpose, that's going to create progress. But if we're just doing it and it doesn't feel right, we're going to have all these emotional conflicts within ourselves trying to hold us back. And like you mentioned earlier on, getting out there and having a low risk cash the card reader machines out there, but it didn't feel right. So it didn't work. It was, you knew in your gut what it was. Your gut is high risk entrepreneurs online US. And because you do, that's where you thrive.
Yeah. And the interesting thing, just kind of bringing it back full circle to the whole supplement nutraceutical space is, I've gone through many, many cycles of ups and downs and offers and pricing strategies and all that with supplements merchants. And, I do have to say, like, at least, the merchants that we support at Direct PayNet are usually, not the ones that are doing things that don't feel right.
Correct.
And a lot of merchants who are in this space are doing things that don't feel right to them. Like if you are selling something or if you're doing something that you wouldn't want your mother to buy or your aunt or your cousin or somebody that then why are you doing it to other people, right? Like if you're selling something that you're proud of, that's great. But if you're doing something and, deceptive or not feeling right, it'll work for a little while. I mean, I've seen it work for a little while for many, but then eventually either your conscience is just not going to want to do it anymore, or it's going to explode and you're going to be digging yourself a hole. So, I mean, that's actually a really good way to kind of put it, is if it doesn't feel right, let's just don't do it, or figure out how you can make it
feel the reason
right.
why.
Like if you're selling supplements, it doesn't mean you can't sell that supplement. Maybe it's your copy, maybe it's the way you're advertising, maybe it's the type of product, maybe it's the claims. There's a billion things, but make it feel like something that you're proud of. And then ultimately, even if you make less money in the interim, I think longevity is something that a lot of people we're in this instant gratification type of society right now, that people forget that you're playing the long game. You got 30, 40, 50 years to work, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So it's not going to happen overnight.
Maria, there's so much more we could talk about. Entitlement is another one we could talk about. Instant gratification is another one there as well. Manifestation. There's so much that we could talk. But the thing that I really, when I work with people and I see their eyes light up, is when they realize that they probably don't use 95% of their brain in a conscious capacity most of the time. And actually, it's just sitting there all untapped. And that's what I do, is I now show people how to release that untapped superpower of their unconscious mind, because their unconscious mind can process 1,000,000 times more data per second compared to the conscious mind, the prefrontal cortex, where they live only 5% of the time. We've got this massive David and Goliath thing going on. Some people call it willpower, and we know how hard willpower is. That's in the prefrontal cortex, the conscious mind, willpower. Whereas the unconscious mind, that's the powerhouse. If you could plug a printer into our unconscious mind, it would print out your entire life to date.
Wow. Well, I do have to say that I'm all for this woo-woo stuff, like in the sense of, like, as I got older, I started realizing, we call it woo-woo, but it's reality, right? Energy.
Yeah, exactly.
People say I vibe with him. I'm on the same wavelength. We use these terms, but you don't really think. So it's funny that you mentioned, I didn't even think, but yeah, we use these terms because there's some basis behind it, right?
Yeah.
But I will say that I think, this was an interesting story, and I think we have to do a part 2. So guys, we're gonna be doing a part 2 to this, because I do want to really flesh out and give people, at least people who are interested in the entrepreneurship journey, a lot of information on, I think mental tools to be successful, because I think you need lot of and I think a lot of entrepreneurs are into this. I have to say, the more I grow in my entrepreneurship journey, the more I let go of things. Sometimes I'm like, this is just not meant to happen. I know it's a lot of money, but it just, again, it doesn't feel right.
You just mentioned 3 of my favorite words: let it go. I preach that so much with my clients. Just let it go. Just let it go. So, but I can't let it go.
Yeah. And if you can, out of sight, out of mind, I think is another one, right? Sometimes when you have to let something go, you have to move from it so you don't constantly see it. But
absolutely.
And this was, I think this was eye-opening for a lot of people in direct response. I think a lot of, whether you're selling supplements or anything in the e-commerce space, you see a lot of the coaches and the, super, super wealthy people kind of showing off online. Keep in mind, I think, Ant, you could have put most of the current coaches to shame at this point, based on your success, at least. Your success, you were huge. You were like, people, I like to call some people, ghosts or whales, and the ghosts are kind of behind the scene. Not many people know them, but when you know them, you're like, oh, wow, so I was always very impressed with, just, the way that you worked. I mean, at least for me, you were always very nice to me, very respectful, regardless of how much I had, didn't have, how much you had, and so forth. So I'm very happy that you graced me with your time, and we got to connect again. I will point to my background here. I don't know if you could see this little. I'm gonna actually get up and get it. Okay? So I'm gonna get up and get it. I was cleaning out my office, so I'm getting up to get it. So I was cleaning out my office, and
yes.
And I have a Mozart pen, a Mont Blanc Mozart pen, and this is something that you gave me, Ant. And I've kept my whole entrepreneurship journey, and I created my little bookcase here of kind of like the stuff that's kind of special to me. One day I'll do an episode and tell people what each thing means. But it was my good luck pen. I used it to sign.
Lovely.
Opening up companies and all this stuff. Brilliant. And and because of our connection early on, it was something that I kept special to me close by. So I really thank you for your time. And we will have a part 2, and we won't call it woo-woo stuff. We'll call it important mindset tips for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, AKA woo-woo.
So thank you, everybody, for listening. I will say one thing. So, Ant, we're going to be putting down your information. If you guys want to talk to Ant, if you need some mindset tips, if you want to read his book, there's so much to unpack, and we will have you back later on this year, and we're gonna have a more mindset kind of conversation. But thank you so much for your time, Ant.
Oh, you're welcome. Lovely to catch up.